Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to today's session all about building your hardware asset management strategy. So we're going to cover a number of things within this webinar that you can implement so you can build your own hardware asset management strategy. So we're going to have a look at how you can start your hardware asset management strategy, how you can actually start building it out. We're going to look at some strategy ideas, some templates as well that we use, and then we'll just do a bit of a roundup at the end. So basically, we're going to go from end to end how you can build out your hardware asset management strategy for 2025. Just to give you guys a quick reminder on what hardware asset management actually is. So HAM, or hardware asset management, are the people, processes, and technologies required to manage the defined, remember it's about the defined hardware assets within your scope throughout their life cycle. Defined basically means what you consider to be a hardware asset. So, for example, it'd be desktops, laptops, mobile phones, tablets, monitors, switches, routers, servers, etc. But you may have other things that you want to add into that hardware asset management scope as well that are quite niche to your region or your office or your part of the business, etc. So it's whatever you have defined and agreed upon as being the scope for what is considered a hardware asset. So HAM starts from the planning phase to ensure that hardware assets are correctly managed throughout their usage, right from that initial thought that you're going to need a hardware asset, all the way through to the retirement or IT asset disposition, aka you want to try and get some money back for it at the end of its life, or unfortunately, there is no value left in it, so you have to dispose of the asset. So a starting point then when building a hardware asset management strategy, the first thing that I would always say to do is to check your organization's overall goals, their mottos, their ethos, whatever they put out there to their customers, their shareholders as part of their financial reports, etc., to understand what the overall business goals are. What are they striving for, and how can hardware asset management help with that? So, for example, they may have a big green IT initiative, and you can factor that in when building in your ham strategy to just elevate hardware asset management more within the organization. So yeah, if the organization is saying that they're really looking at green IT or environmental sustainability, you can tailor your hardware asset management strategy with a bit of green IT and sustainability in there to look at the power wattage within your data centers, for example, and try and reduce that, or look at better spec monitors that consume less power, or even to go to implement IT asset disposition to recycle and basically follow that green IT and sustainability ethos and mentality that the overall organization has, but put it at the end of your life, which you may not currently be doing, so that you can then see the environmental benefits of recycling your hardware at the end of the life. So always have a look at what the organization's overall goals and objectives are for that year and see how you can tie in your hardware asset management or even IT asset management into that. Next thing, you need to be talking to your key stakeholders. So speak to the likes of finance, service management, HR, legal, infosec, procurement, general IT, even stakeholders out in the business in like your sales and marketing teams. What are their plans and their strategies for the year? And again, how can ITAM help with that? Also, understand how they established their own strategy. Were they given some sort of direction? Were they also looking at the business goals and objectives for that year when building out what their plans were going to be? Or is there a particular product launch that they're working on that may require additional hardware that you're going to have to help cater for? All these things to think about when building your ham strategy for the next year. But host one-on-ones, host workshops, host webinars, do whatever you need to do to speak to these key stakeholders to understand what their goals and objectives are, how that'll impact ITAM and hardware asset management, and what you then need to put into your ham strategy. Is there anything in the yearly results or the company report that can impact it, such as like they want to invest more in certain technologies? Something that's become really kind of an open goal for ITAM and hardware asset management at the moment is artificial intelligence. Organizations that are pushing towards looking in using AI within their organization for internal reasons or even for their own customer bases. Hardware asset management can play a role in that, and we'll talk about that in a second, but you need to look at how ITAM can help AI. So ITAM for AI. Rather than looking at AI for ITAM, it's how ITAM can prepare the organization to be AI ready in effect. So AI obviously uses a lot of internal data to generate its own intelligence. But if you're looking at bad data, especially within the likes of your asset management database, your configuration management database, then the AI is going to learn bad habits and bad information. So ITAM and HAM plays a key role in making sure that your data sets are up to date, they're relevant, they're accurate, and they're right, so that then the artificial intelligence that your organization is so keen on implementing is learning from actual accurate data. So think about that when you're building out your HAM strategy as well. If the organization is really pushing for new technologies, new ways of working, artificial intelligence, or any other buzzwords, see how Harder Asset Management can help with that. On the flip side of that, if investment in new technologies and evolving things isn't actually on the roadmap and it's more about cost savings, an open goal for ITAM and hardware asset management. Look at how you can save money within your hardware fleet. This may be by extending the lifespan of things, looking at different hardware models. There's all sorts of cost optimization opportunities that you can look to implement. And also look at what you within the ITAM team want to do with hardware asset management. What's been a real pain point for you over the past year or the past few years? What do you really want to achieve in the next 12 months, the next 18 months, 24 months, etc.? What do you want to elevate your ITAM and your hardware asset management function to? It may include things like a complete overhaul of your processes. It may be implementing a new tool. It may be a mass hardware refresh, implementing ITAD, maybe even implementing a new ITAD vendor, a new hardware supplier, whatever it may be. Think about what you want to achieve as a IT asset management function for hardware asset management in the next 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, and factor that into your HAM strategy. Remember that you can build out your HAM strategy as a first attempt where you can put all of your ambitious, audacious goals, and then it's likely that that's going to get whittled down as you go through and talk to key stakeholders. You talk to your senior management, your ITAM sponsor, your C levels, etc., as they give you more guidance on what would actually be realistic and work within the organization. But as a first draft, there's no harm in putting these, really audacious and ambitious goals within your strategy. Even if it doesn't make it to the final strategy, you can still have it as a parked idea for something that you can build upon later on as you start to mature HAM within your organization. And yeah, exactly like I just said there, you can build out all of the plans that you want, but if your senior management and stakeholders don't agree with it, it's likely that you're going to have to park that idea for a bit. So when you've built out your HAM strategy, when you're building out, sorry, your HAM strategy, always go and talk to your senior management, understand what they expect from HAM and ITAM, what their expectations are for the next 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. You can see the theme here, so that you can build your HAM strategy around their goals and expectations. If you're on one page and your senior management are on another page, and you build a HAM strategy that's on your page and not their page, you could end up with a bit of an awkward situation. So yeah, make sure that you speak to your senior management and your ITAM HAM sponsor to understand what they are expecting from you. We mentioned about communication and speaking to other stakeholders, and that is really critical when building out your strategy. And here are some suggested topics, if you like, to speak to other key stakeholders to help align with their strategies and the overall IT strategy as well. So when speaking to your service management team, understand what their SLAs are, understand what your SLAs are as well for hardware fulfillment or stock. Are there new ITSM tools, alignment with ITIL, new modules that are being implemented? Some key questions that you can ask them there. Also ask them, what kind of stock do you need? Are you running too lean? Have you got too much? Is it taking too long for hardware to get to you for you to then deploy? How's the imaging process going? How's the asset tagging? So many different things that you can speak to them about within the service management world that can help you to build out your strategy and also influence the ITSM world. Within InfoSec, again, it's about technologies, policies, or regulations that might impact the hardware standpoint. Again, it's like how ITAM is that extra layer of defense within information security. They may come back to you and say, actually, we want these regular reports from you on the different hardware models that are out there, on what you're planning on refreshing, who's got what, that kind of thing, giving them that visibility to help them keep your organization safe and secure. So these aren't going to typically be one-way conversations. They're going to be two-way conversations where, like, service management, security, procurement, etc., may come back to you and say, That's great that you're asking us how we can help you, but here's how you can help us as well to build that relationship and that two-way communication streak. Procurement are another really good one to discuss, to talk to about. New processes, again, procurement technologies, are they getting any new modules that are going to impact you? Is there anything that's going to delay the ordering process? The new vendor onboarding, stuff like that. How will ITAM and hardware asset management need to align with that? A lot of organizations implement onboarding techniques, and they look to modify and change these when it's a new supplier, and sometimes that can catch you out if you're not aware of these changes, and sometimes it can involve more time being taken to onboard a new vendor, which can be frustrating from your point and procurement's point. If you haven't given them all the information that they need, you haven't got all the information that they need, it can be a real pain. So open up that dialogue early so you can understand what their strategies and their plans are, how that's going to impact you, and how you can adapt and evolve with that. Your server and data center teams, again, look at the hardware in there. Are they looking to replace any servers this year? Are they looking to move any instances to the cloud? How can you help, and how can they help you in telling you when this is going to happen, how they can tell you which physical hardware is going to be moved, and then also as ITAM, forgetting about just the ham bit, but as ITAM, you can help them right size their cloud instances. And finally, within finance, the horrible B word, budgets. Any budgeting implications that are going to impact ITAM? The likelihood is yes, there's a lot of budgeting implications at the moment, especially when it comes to buying new hardware refresh planning, even new software licenses, etc. So speak to them really early on in your ham strategy building so that you can understand what budget constraints are going to impact you, which again may impact your strategy for hardware refreshes, new models, etc. So really, these are 5 really critical key stakeholders, and there's some good starting points where you can engage with them on. So when building out your ham strategy, if you're starting from zero or a brownfield or a relatively immature estate, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit and immediate actions that you can look at building out. First one is defining your hardware asset management scope. So like we said at the very beginning, what asset types are going to be managed by hardware asset management? Will ham be a governance or an ownership function, aka will actually hardware asset management be involved in every single step with that asset, or are there going to be asset type owners out there that we're going to rely on to be, help and support and actually manage the day to day, and we just step in and help manage the hardware refresh planning, help plan the budgeting, break fix, etc., or are we going to be more hands on? There's the ham function. And also then making sure that those asset type owners are defined and supportive. It's all about, again, the communication, building those relationships. You as an ITAM and ham function cannot be responsible, cannot know everything about all the asset types that are out there within your organization. So you're going to need to build that unofficial ITAM ham team to help you understand the different makes, models, what they're used for, when they're due for refresh, etc. Really good, easy one as well is to look at building out internal audits within your ham strategies. So this is firstly going to be looking at inactive assets. So these are assets that haven't been used for a set period of time. Reclaiming these as well. There's a lot of assets that end up in drawers, cupboards. Line managers take assets from levers and don't give them back to IT. This may be just because they don't know what the process is, or you don't have a process. So look at getting and reclaiming all of those inactive assets. Focus on those end user technology ones first, like your laptops, mobiles, and tablets, because they're going to be ones that you can build up stock and reuse really easily. And as ham matures, you can look at how you can automate this process. Automated reminders going out when hardware hasn't been online for a set period of time. Automated, emails, reports, chases, whatever you can think of and whatever you have at your disposal. So the next step of those internal and external audits then are looking at how hardware asset management can be triggered by that internal or external audits. Now we're looking at ham, ITAM as a whole. It can be internally audited by your internal audit teams. It can be externally audited by the likes of KPMG, Deloitte, EY, etc. These are more looking at your processes and your controls. I've been through plenty of these. Sometimes if you're in a really good position, they can actually be really beneficial because it's nice to have a third set of eyes on what you're doing, and it gives you some ideas on how you could improve. Other times they can be an absolute nightmare because the people that are auditing you don't actually know about ITAM or ham. So when you're implementing hardware asset management or ITAM internally, that can actually trigger internal audits because it's a new function, it's a new governance, and your internal audit teams have never seen this before, so they want to come along and audit you. So yeah, just make sure that you're prepared and aware of that as well. And also just having a plan in place. If you're building out your ham strategy, maybe one of the early processes, which we'll talk about in a second, is that audit process, so that if you are triggered, if you do trigger an audit internally or externally, you know what to do. Again, audit processes are really easy. It just makes sure that the roles and responsibilities are aligned, the data sets are defined, timelines and timeframes, etc., are aligned as well. It's quite a simple one to do. It's not one of the more complicated ones. Speaking of processes, another low-hanging immediate ham fruit that you can gather is that process scoping. Basically having a look at what processes are in place and what's missing, a gap analysis, if you will. This then helps you build out what your ham strategy is going to look like in terms of, we need to implement these processes in the next 12 months. This is going to be in our ham strategy to implement these processes, to get them going, to do the full education and communication out there to our stakeholders. And yeah, it's a really good starting point. If you don't have anything in place, then make sure that you focus on implementing the key ones in the first, the short term, and then look at the more mature ones as you build up your existing processes. And yeah, also look at a plan on what needs to be updated. Hardware and ITAM processes should be fluid. They should be looked at on a regular basis to see what needs to be updated, what needs to be matured, whether it's still fit for purpose. So build that into your strategy as well to look at ones that haven't potentially been updated for a long time. Get those updated, get them more aligned to how your actual ways of working are. So in the mid-term, these are not low-hanging fruit, but they're not earth-shattering, if that makes sense. AIMDb inventory coverage is something you should be focusing on. 95% plus is normally what is defined as, the sweet spot. You're in a really good position. There's only 5% or less of the estate that's not within your AIMDb. Ideally, you want 100%, but as we all know, within ITAM, 100% is a bit of a unicorn. So look for that 95% plus coverage within your AIMDb. 90% is also really good. If you're starting at a lot less low number, like a 70 or a 60%, 90% is still an improvement and a really good starting point. But have a plan as to how you're going to find that extra 10% and put it into your AIMDb. To establish your inventory coverage percentage, you need to be looking at your AIMDb and your inventory sources and basically doing a delta of, this is in the AIMDb, this is in the inventory sources, what isn't where, basically. So this is in our network inventory tool, but it's not in the AIMDb. Okay, why is that? Let's get it into the AIMDb. Oh, this is in Intune for our mobiles, but it's not in the AIMDb. Why is it not in the AIMDb? Let's get it in there. And you can build out kind of loads of different circles to show these are all in the AIMDb and the inventory sources. This is a small pocket that's in the network tool, not in the AIMDb, Intune, whatever other discovery sources you have. So you can then build up what your inventory coverage percentage is within your asset management database. And then as you build your ham strategy and implement ITAM, you can start building out KPIs for this to show the progress on a monthly basis. Always good to show your senior management and your stakeholders the progress that you're making, just to get them on board with ITAM and ham. Next up is evolving those policies and processes that we mentioned in the low-hanging fruit area. We're also looking at policies this time though, so processes are a great starting point, but you're also going to need your policies that your processes can basically hang off and point towards. So create these key ham processes, define the core and key ham, create the ham policies and the ITAM policies, sorry, and then look at those core critical ham processes that you need to be implementing. And that whole communication, education, implementation plan that needs to follow. There's no point in implementing a process that you're not going to shout about. You need to get the messaging out there. You need to be telling everyone about your new ways of working so that they're fully aligned and understand what they need to be doing. This includes work instructions, knowledge articles, and RACI matrices as well to accompany that process flow, however you've built that. Next up is looking at your target operating model for ITAM. So this is looking at building and designing one for your ham strategy. A great accompaniment when you're building out a ham strategy is building a target operating model or a TOM. So that again, it just helps support your ham strategy, but also looks at your long-term visions as well. Not just your short, medium term, but your long-term and maybe even your long term vision for hardware asset management or ITAM. So you focus this on your people, processes, KPIs, vendors, and technologies, and also those things that impact the business from a wider organization standpoint and how that can link in with hardware asset management. A key thing that I will say here is please make it realistic. It's all well and good having, big audacious goals, but if it's just generally never going to happen within your organization, yeah, there's probably no point in putting it in your target operating model. Let's be realistic. Let's think ambitious, but not, going to the moon kind of ideas, because yeah, you can just get deflated if you start building out all of these things that you really want to do and then can't actually do it. And finally, in the midterm action, something that keeps cropping up a lot with organizations over the past few years is shadow IT. So users that have gone out on their own, not followed the process, installed software they shouldn't. But when it comes to hardware asset management, is getting wrong hardware models, for example, not the standard specification. A cost center's gone off and said, yep, fine, we've got $2,000 budget, just go and buy whatever you can for that. And it's not part of the hardware convention. It's not part of your standard hardware models either. So yeah, go and investigate those ones. People with the wrong IT asset types. Understand how you can replace those and get them back into your hardware convention, your hardware scope, or even the wrong manufacturer. That's always a horrible one when you're like a Dell house and someone's brought a Lenovo, or someone's brought a MacBook when you don't have any support mechanisms in place for Apple. Just yeah, go out, make sure that the users are aware of their mistake and aware of the correct process to be following moving forward, and aware that you've got a standard hardware catalog within your organization. And the other thing to look at then is users with more than one asset assigned. Now, I'm not talking about someone who's got a laptop and a phone, for example, but someone that's got two laptops assigned. Two phones, a phone, an iPad, and a laptop, a desktop, and a laptop. It's like investigating those to understand why they have so many assets assigned to them. It may be the nature of their job, and if they've got business justification, fine, no bother. But it may be that they've been holding on to assets that you can actually put back into stock or reuse for someone else. Longer term actions. Now we're looking at 12 months plus at this stage, and we'll go on to that in a bit more detail later on. But looking into hardware as a service, or BYOD, or desktop as a service, this could be an option for you, migrating away from your current purchase options and looking into hardware as a service, that leasing mechanism, so that you don't physically own the equipment. You could even just look at this for like managed print services. It doesn't just have to be, your laptops, your desktops, etc. You could just look at even your phones is a great way of, a lot of organizations own their laptops, their desktops, their infrastructure, but lease phones because, phones, they have a shorter lifespan at the moment. In particular, Apple devices, Apple release new product and suddenly, some older ones, the OS starts getting slow, or the camera quality is not good enough for certain roles and stuff like that. So maybe a hardware as a service, device as a service mechanism for phones is a good idea. For printers is a good idea as well. Or also even looking at BYOD implementation for things like phones and tablets, saying, look, we'll give you a set budget, that will contribute towards you getting a phone, but it's your phone, it's your responsibility, but we need to manage it via our container within, Intune or whatever it is, so that we only see the corporate side of it. We can still be secure, but it's your phone. You can go out and buy whatever you want. A lot of organizations, not a lot, but we've seen some organizations move to this model as well, so that they've removed the hardware purchase mechanism. They're saving money on mobile phones and tablets because they're only given a small fee per employee to go and buy their own one, but then it's up to the user to go out and do it. And if someone loses it, if it's broken, if it gets stolen, then it's up to the user to then buy a new one. So you have that kind of cost saving mechanism in there as well. You may also be looking at new technologies within your ham or ITAM function. This might be migrating to a new one, or just buying one in general if you've not got anything in place. You're moving from Excel spreadsheets into a ServiceNow or a Flexera or something like that. Add that into your ham strategy if you've got budget for it. Also look at your hardware asset tagging technologies. That might be something you're looking to implement and mature in the long term. You may have just really bog standard. I don't have an asset tag on here. I don't know why I'm looking. This is my own device, but you may have just bog standard barcodes, and you want to implement QR codes or something a bit more 2025, if you like, something you can scan that will go and update the AMTB automatically, something that if it's lost, they just scan a QR code and they can't see the organization that you are. Just something new, something different, something fresh, that's way more, aligned with 2025 rather than the old barcodes that are out there. Hey, no offense to anyone that does have the barcodes out there. They are still really good, but yeah, there are much better asset tagging, especially like RFID technologies, where if you physically take, I'm just going to get my phone again, but if you've got like an asset tag on a phone and you've got scanners at your entry and exit points within your offices, the RFID can actually scan it when you leave a certain area. So if a device gets lost or stolen, or you're doing it as part of your internal audits, you can see that the device left the building at this time, so you know that it's not physically on site. They're very cool technologies, but asset tagging doesn't seem to get much love or attention at the moment. Also, longer term, looking at those larger hardware refreshes, so like full laptop, desktop refreshing. If you've never done it before, it might be a bit of a shock to your C level when you go to them with millions of dollars worth of hardware refreshing that you need to do. Replacing multiple asset types with, per user into single agile asset types as well. This goes back to you've got a phone and a tablet and a laptop and a desktop. Why? Let's just all consolidate that down as well. And then also working with your server and infrastructure teams as to anything that their long-term strategies that move into the cloud. They may have a long-term plan to move to the cloud, or even vice versa. They're in the cloud and they want to go back to on-prem. That's something that you need to be aware of and you need to put into your ham strategy, because you need to plan for that, whether that's retiring and ITADing old servers, switches, routers, etc., or actually buying new ones because they're taking things out of the cloud back to on-premise, because actually the cloud's not as cheap as everyone thought it was. A lot of green IT talk during this, and we'll keep on that theme as well, because it's a key focus for a lot of businesses at the moment, a lot of organizations. So, things that you can be doing in your ham strategy is looking at the energy consumption for things like monitors, printers, servers. In Europe and the UK in particular, whenever you buy anything, you get an energy efficiency rating like A to F. I think it's F or G, something like that. A being the best, it's using less watts, it's using less power, it's causing less damage to the environment, with the F ones being the worst ones. Maybe you could review that, your monitors, your hot desks, your servers, printers, and see where yours rate. They did actually refresh the energy efficiency rating a few years ago. So something that used to be a B may now be an E, for example. So when you bought it, you may have thought you're doing good, but now with the new standards, it's actually really bad, and there's actually way better ones. Maybe that's something you could look at implementing in there as well. And just making sure that you align with the organization's green IT and environmental sustainability plans as well. Make sure you put in that into your ham strategy. If that's the big buzzword and the big focus for your organization, really play on that, like really play on that, and how ITAM and ham can help with it. I mentioned there about not including things that aren't realistic, but again, you need to look at your ham nirvana, and your ham nirvana is the state of perfect, happiness and peace. These are things that have no time constraints on them. You're not going to put a label on it. You're not going to say it's going to be done within a certain amount of time. Still needs to be realistic, though. As much as it's a nirvana, it still needs to be realistic within your organization. And what does your complete end state look like? What does ham look like when you've implemented everything you want to look like? This may include automation. It may include that, like we said, the RFID asset tags. It may include, or automated hardware refreshes, automated messages out to users when a device has been offline for a set period of time. What does your end state look like? Think about then the technology requirements, the resource requirements, the organizational presence that ITAM will need to have to achieve your end state. How ITAM is ingrained within that BAU life, the different levels of ham maturity, and how you're going to reach dynamic, which is the top, the world class harder asset management function within your organization. How you can even look at getting that 98% plus inventory coverage percentage. It may require manual additions into your AMDB, but you can do it. How are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? With this, if there's some complicated things, don't put a time frame on it. Just build up that plan on how you're going to do it, and how you're going to pass internal audits with flying colors as well. If you, like I said, when you're implementing something like ITAM or ham, it can become a trigger for internal audits. So build out that plan on how you're going to pass those. You can even start asking your internal audit teams to audit you if you've made a change or an improvement. They may reject that request because they've got their own timelines and their own calendars for audits anyway. But sometimes if you're feeling particularly confident and wanting to be audited, you can engage with them to say, look, we want to do this every 6 months while we're implementing things, or every year or whatever. So have a plan on how you're going to pass those with flying colours. Get that under the nose of your C level so that you can show what an awesome job ITAM and HAM are doing within your organisation. So just a quick recap then on what we've been discussing so far. Check your internal intranet pages, company websites to understand your overall strategies and business goals. Speak with your IT colleagues, team heads to establish what their strategies are for the short, medium and long term so that you can adapt that into your HAM one, and also understand how you can help them achieve their objectives. Assess your estate, what urgently needs fixing. That should be a priority for your first strategy actions. Think about realistic actions that you'd like to achieve for HAM in the next 6 to 9 months. These are your medium-term goals, and paint that HAM Nirvana picture. You can shape how you're going to shape your HAM strategy, however long it may take, for that ultimate dream and that ultimate end state. So let's look at some harder asset management strategy ideas. So this is just a short term, the first 6 months, and this is something that we typically do within organizations that don't really have any ITAM or harder asset management. So within the first 6 months, we look at doing a complete gap analysis to identify the benchmark on the current harder asset management estate. For this, we are looking at your asset management database, we're looking at your configuration management database, you're looking at your inventory tools, we're looking at any other tools that can gather information on your harder estate, we're looking at your processes, your policies, etc., and building out what's missing. Where are you? What is not currently within scope that should be within scope? What's your inventory coverage percentage? We're looking at all of that and then building out a plan to mitigate those gaps and build up that inventory coverage percentage. So gap analysis, establish your current AMDB inventory coverage percentage, identify all sources of inventory data that can help enrich and build your AMDB as well. Something that sounds easy on paper, but when you're in a business and organization, can actually be quite tricky going out and trying to establish, okay, what technologies manage what, how do we plug that in here, how do we get reports from it, do InfoSec have the reports that we need, to security, to networks, to the infrastructure team? It's a lot of networking, it's a lot of speaking to people and seeing what kind of technologies and reports they have. And finally, a lovely little win that you can do is also establishing your IT asset type owners and their involvement within your HAM scope as well. So low hanging fruit, infrastructure team, you are IT asset type owners for servers and storage arrays and stuff like that. Network switches, routers, LAN, WAN, etc. You are our go-to people, modems, etc. You are our go-to people for that. End user technologies, you're our go-to people for desktops, laptops, monitors, your telephony. You may be responsible for the phones. Do you see what I mean? Like building out and identifying those stakeholders that can be the unofficial expansion of your ITAM team and also the asset type owners. Moving to your 6 to 12 months, then that's when we're going to start looking at implementing some of our harder asset management policies and processes. These don't have to be world-class, really mature processes and policies. These can be basics, just getting something in place so that your stakeholders and end users know what they should be following. Start building out your monthly reporting packs as well, your key performance indicators to senior management on your harder asset management progress, what you've been implementing, the improvements you've been making, etc. Start building out those KPIs. In fact, speak to your senior management and your ITAM sponsors and your key stakeholders as to what data sets they would actually like to see. Looking at the AMDB integration with the defined inventory tools that you were looking at in the previous 6 months, and then trying to achieve that AMDB inventory coverage percentage, aiming for about 90% within the first 6 to 12 months. That's probably likely to be more towards the end of that time period, more towards the 11, 12 months. And you're obviously going to need other factors in there to help you achieve that, like the integration with other inventory tools. And then moving on to your 12 plus months, your long-term stuff. Here we're looking at proactive hardware refreshing, being implemented and actioned, and just becoming a bit of BAU. Everyone knows the life cycle of your assets. Everyone knows that when an asset reaches 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, then it needs refreshing. You're being proactive with that budgeting for your hardware refresh planning. You've got integration with HR, finance, and procurement tools for that data enrichment To give you an example, ServiceNow is really good for being able to do this, where you can integrate with your procurement tool. So when you add an asset, it looks for that serial number and populates the PO date, the PO number, the invoice date, the invoice number, the vendor that you purchased it from. And there are tools out there as well you can actually integrate to get the warranty information for the device automatically populated into your asset management database, so you don't have to do that. Looking at having your infosec tools integrate into here, your Intunes, your telephony tools, whatever you've got out there, having it all integrated to enrich your AMDB so it is your central source of truth and it is reliable and trustworthy. If you're not doing it, maybe look at that asset tagging implementation, or if you are doing it, look at maturing your asset tagging technologies, the design even of the asset tags, etc. It takes a long time to do, but it is really beneficial because you can also implement like naming standard change as well if that's something you're looking at doing. So yeah, if your naming standard for your devices at the moment isn't great, you can implement a naming standard change when building out new or updating your asset tagging. And achieve a high level result as part of a ham maturity assessment. If you remember back at the beginning, we a few slides ago, we are talking about that dynamic hardware asset management maturity level. But once you've been doing ham and building out your ham strategy for 12 plus months, you should be moving along that ham maturity curve. You should be going from that basic, low maturity right through to that more dynamic one and that higher end, more mature ham maturity level at the very long term. And this I've put up to 3 years, but this could even be longer. It all depends on your organization. So here we're looking at expanding the ITAM team. I'll put ham there, but defining just expanding the ITAM team by X amount. So for example, you may want to build up a team of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however many, but put this in your very long-term plan. Might also be looking at migrating to a new ITAM technology, or even implementing one if you don't have one currently that has better hardware asset management capabilities. I always say there's absolutely no harm in window shopping and keeping up to date with all the ITAM technologies that are out there. Even if you have one in place already, no harm in window shopping. And if you don't have anything at all, there's no harm in going in and tire kicking and having a look and getting some demos. Might want to also move to a specific hardware as a service, maybe for specific IT asset types. Like we mentioned before, investigating maybe leasing your phones, maybe looking at leasing your printers, monitors, whatever it might be, or even doing the whole leasing scheme across all IT asset types. That may even be what your plan is. And also implement those controls around green IT, energy consumption, and environmental sustainability of your IT assets. Things are evolving in terms of this all the time. Like I said, even the energy efficiency rating has had a complete refresh. A lot of other things are moving towards being more green, etc. So even what it is now, it may look completely different and be a lot easier to be a lot greener in 3-4 years time. But having that as part of your ham strategy and your ham roadmap is something that's really important. It's always really important when you're building your strategy that you get it signed off. You need to get this signed off by your senior management and your ham or ITAM sponsor, the wider ITAM team internally. If you do have other resources, if you're lucky enough to have an ITAM team, they need to be in agreement with it and feel like it's the right thing to be doing within your organization, and also motivated to carry out the strategy that you've implemented. The stakeholders involved that you were discussing with earlier, like we said, security, HR, legal, finance, procurement, all of those guys, get them to sign it off as well to say that they agree with it and they'll agree to help you achieve it. And also, a lot of organizations have quality control, quality assurance, doc management teams that go through and look at all of the wording of a strategy, the text, if it's in the right format, all of that. Oh, it's really boring and mundane, but all of that boring stuff. So make sure that you speak with them to make sure that any physical strategy that you're building is in the right format and is aligned with all the other stakeholders in the organization. Remember, your strategy may also be aligned to your own personal performance goals, your personal development plans, etc., and bonuses. A lot of people, when I go in to help organizations, this is a big flag for them that, my bonus is, related to achieving X, Y, and Z within a ham strategy or an ITAM strategy. So make it realistic, make it achievable so that personally, it doesn't end up being an absolute nightmare for you and unachievable, and therefore you personally don't get a good, review at the end of the year, or you don't, personally get bonuses or whatever. So yeah, that's another reason as to why you need to make it realistic and achievable. So a quick recap then. Break up your strategy into manageable chunks. You can focus on the 3 6 month based batches of achievable harder asset management work. You can then also look, your overall strategy can be about 12 months. Again, you may have 18, 24, 36 months, etc. moving forward, but initially, look at that 12-month time period. Have an unofficial or official if you want it to. Three, you could even be a 5-year plan that you want to present to your ham team and your wider stakeholders and your key sponsors, etc. Just to show the ambition of where you want harder asset management to be and the support that you'd require to achieve that. And ensure that you're tracking your strategy progress via a strategy tracker. Easy for me to say. This is really important so that you can keep a line on your progress, what needs to be done, what you have done, so you can see the progress that you've made and what you need to do moving forward, and report any of those blockers to your ham senior management sponsor. You may need to tweak your strategy along the way. If something was to happen within the organization, like mass layoffs or budget cuts or new, audits, whatever it may be, your ham strategy may need to align to meet that new request or requirement. So yeah, don't think that your ham strategy is set in stone. It needs to be agile. You need to be able to update it and move with your business goals and extra challenges that you may not actually understand at the moment. So let's look at some strategy templates. First of all, like I said in the previous slide about this tracker, this is a really good one to do in Excel. So here's just a general idea of what you can see. You've got your activities on the left-hand side, when you're going to start it, the amount of weeks that you're required, when you actually started it, how long it's actually taken you, and then it calculates the percentage completion there. And you can see like a bar chart. Really, I like visual prompts as to how much progress we've made and what we need to do, etc., and when things are going to start. This is a personal favorite of mine. I love tracking strategies with using this for ITAM. If you're doing ITAM, you can build out a ham and SAM one, but as we're just focusing on ham here, this is a really good one. And Excel even has its own templates in there, so you don't need to build one yourself. Excel has its own, strategy tracker templates that you can actually use that builds in a lot of all of this for you already. So that's a good one, a personal favorite of mine. That's why it's number one. I really enjoy using these as well. You may have other tools as well that you can do something similar with, like Power BI, Tableau, data analytics tools, or even project management tools that you could look at, Miro, Asana, whatever the case may be. But if you don't have any of those and you don't need to consume an extra license, Excel works really well, and I really like this layout. And obviously you can color coordinate it as well. Word documents is another option. I've seen this used a lot with people that don't like using the Excel. In here, it's very similar to the Excel format. You can build out your time frames, what the actions are. You can write down what's being completed and completion percentage. This is a lot more manual than using the Excel format, but it may be a preference for you. You can have a look at this screen grab here if you want to, build your own template and get an idea of the different headings I use. Simple, effective, but quite manual, so please do bear that in mind. But yeah, feel free to take a screen grab or pause the video so that you can see the different headings and data that I've put into the template there. You may also have some, visual mapping software that you want to put your strategy into. Again, it's not a favorite of mine, I must admit, but I have seen organizations require this or use this for your strategy. Again, it's just an example in here. You can use tick boxes, exclamation, different icons, depending on how long it's going to take you, what additional resources, etc. you need. Something to think about. Like I said, not a personal favorite of mine, but if you work this way, then this is another really good idea of keeping that progress and having that visual representation of what your harder asset management strategy looks like. So yeah, make sure that you're planning out your strategy in month-based chunks, not just that overall one with no strategy like we showed you in that tracker that had weeks. You could do it by months, you could do it by quarters, however you want to do it. Make it realistic and align to your organization's overall strategy. Work with your other stakeholders to understand if ham can leverage anything from those other strategies. So yeah, really important to keep those lines of communication open with your key stakeholders. Very, very important. Ensure that your overall ham or ITAM sponsor supports and signs off on your strategy as well. And there are different ways in which you can display your strategy, as we've just shown you three very quick examples. But check with your company standards to ensure that you remain consistent. Like I said, you may not have a choice. There may be a predefined way that your organization does this already. So yeah, speak to your document management team, your QA team, even your ITAM sponsor. They should know what kind of layouts and templates that they use. Believe in the end goal, but remember that your strategies can change. That is a very key message here. They are not set in stone. They need to be flexible. They need to be agile because external influences may mean that you need to react and change your ham strategy against your own wishes. But unfortunately, that's life and it can happen. So yeah, really hope you found that useful. Next up, we're going to be talking about the hardware life cycle management. That's the next plan. We're going to be looking at all through from even just thinking about a hardware asset all the way through to the ITAD and the disposal and the end of life and asset. So that's going to be coming next. So yeah, really hope you found this useful. If you've got any questions, as always, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and yeah, happy iteming.